So we're about halfway through Christine Blasey Ford's testimony, perhaps even more than halfway through. A great number of Republican senators have ceded their time to the prosecutor, Rachel Mitchell, who's asking the questions on their behalf. And then the Democratic senators have been asking the questions themselves, as is normal procedure. About Rachel Mitchell, the prosecutor that the Republicans brought in, this is very important on a couple of counts. So, number one, there was concern on our part that she would be very aggressive against Dr. Blasey. She has not been, so far. And so, in fact, that goes to point two. I was waiting for what I've been calling the live coverage here is the turn. And the turn is, a prosecutor or anyone trying to ascertain the facts of a situation will first get a lay of the land. We'll get the facts set up. Is it your recollection that this happened? When did that happen? Where did it happen, et cetera? And then at some point, they'll turn and ask more probing questions. Now, are you really sure about this? But how about this, right? Now, this late into the proceedings, the turn has not happened. So she's just going through different fact patterns. What happened at that time, then she got to what happened when you started to reveal these allegations. Who did you reveal it to? Which paper? Which congressperson? How? When did you get an attorney? When
Who
did
you say you were afraid of flying to, and why?
Yeah. And so far, if she's trying to catch her in a lie, and now I'm beginning to believe that Rachel Mitchell is on the level and is not necessarily trying to prove a case. I don't know, because we're not at the end yet, but is just trying to ascertain what's happening. If she is an honest actor in that way, she might simply just be going through all this and go, okay, we got the information we needed, and there are really no inconsistencies.
What a great if Rachel Mitchell was like, I would love to ask Judge Kavanaugh some questions now.
Yeah, well, I would love that. Yes, I mean, and by the way, it's weird.
It's weird, right?
If she only asks,
I assume she wasn't supposed to ask Dr. Kavanaugh questions.
So we'll see what happens later in the day, because obviously we're covering this live. At
I can't imagine they would let a sex crimes prosecutor ask questions of Judge Kavanaugh. That seems.
But by the way, why did you bring her if she's a sex crimes prosecutor, and you're not going to ask the person?
Yeah, you know, I never see. Yeah.
So we'll look into that, and obviously, if you're watching this at some later time or another platform, which happens because we do put these videos everywhere, we're on these important issues. We're always live. tyt.com/live. That's where we are right now.
I got a little update on Trump today, because he's obviously watching. Gabriel Sherman, who we all know, has sort of brought down Roger Ailes and Fox News. Now at Vanity Fair, tweeted today that Trump is telling people that he's furious that White House aides didn't give him advance knowledge of how credible Dr. Ford would be.
But look, why did you assume that she was lying? Why did you talk about that if you don't know anything? The man has no ability to do any work. He can't read past the page. He doesn't want to do any homework. He's a childish brat, makes assumptions, and then afterwards, it is Trump 101 to blame someone else. Right. You jumped to conclusions. You said Kavanaugh was telling the truth, and you were 100% sure of it. And now, when you watch it and you go, oh, God damn it looks like she's telling the truth. And then you're like, okay, who do I blame? You, White House aide. Why didn't you tell me? Well, why didn't you look into it yourself? You're the president of the United States. Why didn't you ask the aides earlier?
So just to be clear, apparently we were wrong. Of course, she will also question Brett Kavanaugh.
Okay,
right.
good.
Yeah,
that's what I thought.
Sense.
Okay, I just want to make sure. So that's coming up later, where she will question Kavanaugh, and I'm super interested in that as well. Will she make a turn there, or will she just lay out the facts like she's been doing with Dr. Blasey here? So now, as I mentioned, as we're doing basically the play-by-play and we're watching it together with you guys, Rachel Mitchell could end this entire thing, not right now, but if they ask her tomorrow, did you find her credible? And she says, yes, I absolutely found her credible. Then Kavanaugh is done. Because the Republicans brought in a Republican prosecutor. She had a chance to ask her questions in place of 11 Republican senators. if at the end of those questions she says, I saw no inconsistencies and I found the witness to be credible, it's pretty much over. So now I don't know that Rachel Mitchell's going to do that at all. And I don't know if there's going to be a turn yet, where she then gets more aggressive with Dr. Blasey, but it hasn't happened yet. I don't know to what degree she'll be aggressive or not with Kavanaugh, but we'll see how that goes. But right now, as things stand, the reason that you're hearing the reaction that Ben's been reading to you, whether it was Chris Wallace from Fox News or Trump, according to people inside the White House, is because to anyone that isn't massively biased, and apparently to some that even are, she looks very, very credible. That's why Fox News is like, what's going on here? And Trump is like, okay, why did you guys have me stick my neck out for Kavanaugh if it turns out she was telling the truth? Now, again, it's reported from someone inside the White House to Gabriel Sherman. I know the MAGA will say fake news, etc., but that seems to be the universal reaction. And by the way, with right wing, the way that it works is that in the moment, sometimes there'll be genuine reaction. 24 hours later, they'll go right back to talking points. So the question is, can Kavanaugh survive those 24 hours, et cetera? They'll fall right back in line. So don't get misled about that.
Sung Min Kim, who is a White House reporter for the Washington Post, tweeted this just a minute or so ago. Asked whether he believes Ford is credible, Senator Orrin Hatch says it's early, but, quote, I don't think she's uncredible.
Orrin Hatch was the #1 most aggressive Republican senator against her so far. And he had called the charges earlier phony. And they said, how do you know they're phony? He's like, I just know. Okay, now, after watching that for the morning, as basically you guys and we have done together here, he saw the same thing we saw. He's like, that looks pretty credible. Oops. So that is a massive, historic oops. So now I want to turn to Kavanaugh for a second. What's his track record on whether he's credible or not? So at a minimum, there are 2 significant lies that he has told in previous judicial hearings. He had said, and remember, he's gone up the ladder here in federal judge appointments, and so that's why he had hearings earlier. In those hearings, he was asked about Charles Pickering. Did you work on his nomination when you were at the Bush White House shepherding judicial nominations through? And he basically indicated that he had, at best, a minor role, but pretty much nothing. Okay. Emails came out later showing he was the primary person who shepherded Pickering through. Pickering was a very controversial nominee, eventually did not make it through, and there was a lot of scandal and controversy around him. So Kavanaugh said, it wasn't me, I had nothing to do with it. And emails proved that he absolutely did. And he was the primary person backing Pickering in the Bush White House. That's a very, very significant lie.
That was like in 2004, or perhaps earlier.
The Pickering nomination was in 2001, and then he lied about it later in hearings, right, when he was up for appointment. And so that's borderline massive. That's I'm going to say a strange thing to lie about, and I'll tell you why. I get why he wants to lie about it. I get his reason. Like, I don't want any part of Pickering. And I don't want that.
Pickering was it was tinged with the taint of racism, probably, perhaps appropriately, which caused his nomination to be derailed. And Judge Kavanaugh didn't want any part of that. Didn't want any.
So I get you don't want that political damage as you're going up the ranks. But if you know for a fact that you were the guy who did it and that there are emails, and those emails, by the way, later will become public because that's their public record when you work at the White House, that's a pretty brazen lie to tell. So that gives you a little bit of insight into his character on that. And then on the issue of Manuel Miranda, it was a Republican staffer, apparently, and this is a rough recollection here.
He was definitely a Republican staffer.
Yeah, who had access to stolen Democratic emails and documents. And they asked Kavanaugh if he knew about it. He said, no, absolutely not. Later, emails released, I believe earlier this year or last year, showed, no, Kavanaugh clearly knew about him, clearly got the emails. In fact, one of the emails
was from Miranda. I think communicated with Miranda.
Yeah, and one of the emails had the description spying.
Right.
Okay, so another massive brazen lie by Kavanaugh. So, and I tell you that as context for what I think is the most important thing.
So, real quick, was he asked about the Miranda emails in this confirmation process, or when he was up for the circuit court?
I believe it was for the circuit court. Okay.
But he's lied twice at 2 different confirmation
That's right.
hearings.
And Russ Feingold wrote an article, former senator from Wisconsin, saying he was part of the people who asked the questions that Kavanaugh lied to in the earlier proceedings.
He asked the Miranda questions.
Yeah, and he said Judge Kavanaugh has literally never appeared before the Senate without lying. Okay, so one side appears to be very credible, even according to Orrin Hatch. Okay.
Not uncredible.
Yes. The other side has a history of not being credible. So then let's go to the main event here. So these are the things that you have to be thinking about, and the whole country and these senators are thinking about as they're looking at these hearings. Is she telling the truth? That's job one, to determine that. Because if there was an attempted rape by a Supreme Court nominee, he's not likely to make it onto the court if you believe she's telling the truth. So far, that seems to be a huge check. It seems even by early Republican reaction, there's no reason not to believe her. And her answers to the prosecutor have been excellent. So, hey, do you remember this? Honest where she remembers it, honest where she doesn't, giving great details as to why she did the things that she did. There's been no trip up. The closest thing to it was, you're afraid of planes, but you took a lot of plane rides. True. Okay.
Can I jump in on Donald Trump Jr. here, relevant to that?
Yep.
Donald Trump Jr. I'm no psychological professor. Not a point he needed to make. I'm no psychological professor, but it does seem weird to me that someone could have a selective fear of flying. Can't do it to testify, but for vacation, well, it's not a problem at all. So,
yeah, so that's the best they've got, and it is a thin, thin read. And remember, the flying has nothing to do with the substance of the allegations. The flying is, could she have come in earlier to Washington to talk to the Republicans? Not remotely a big issue in terms of the substance of these hearings.
And by the way, there are plenty of people who don't fly when they don't have to. Plenty, many.
Yeah.
I mean, that you're like, yeah, I hate flying. I have a fear of flying. Obviously, if I have to for work, I go. If my grandmother is sick across the country, I go. And I go for vacation. I hate it. If I don't have to go, I don't fly. It's not that complicated.
I have a family member who's afraid of flying, and he flies all the time. He goes between Turkey and America and Europe, et cetera. Why? Because we live in a connected world, and he's got to fly, even though he hates it.
Yeah, so.
If that's the thing that they're hanging their hat on, they're toast. They're done. Okay. So, all right. So, is she telling the truth? So far, seems exceedingly credible. Is there a chance of mistaken identity? Well, the Republicans threw this curveball last night where they talked about, oh my God, we've got 2 people who have volunteered that they did the sexual assault. Well, first of all, which one? And that's kind of curious that 2 different people would say, no, me, I did the sexual assault. I did it, right? And, okay, well, is it Bob or is it Steve? Which one is it, right? So, and we have no evidence, nothing about whether they're in any way credible, no information about it. It's just a red herring, it appears, thrown in at the last second. When she was asked about it, she said 100% positive that it's Brett Kavanaugh. By the way, unlike Ramirez, who's the second accuser, doesn't appear to be, in my estimation, 100% positive. And it's a good thing if you're trying to arrive at the truth here that Christine Blasey Ford came forward first, and that she's the one testifying here, and because she makes a very credible witness. Now, the third question is, does it matter? And we talked to you earlier about how there was a poll that was done that came out yesterday. 54% of Republicans saying, even if he did it, it doesn't matter. But that was before they watched her say, he covered my mouth and I thought I might die and I couldn't breathe. And watching her say it, I'd be surprised, even as much disdain as I have for Republican voters who selected Trump at this late date, that even Republican voters, especially female Republican voters, looked at that and thought, nah, it doesn't matter. It was no big deal. And that's a hell of a thing to say on an attempted rape with those details. So I think that and the poll indicates for an overwhelming majority of Americans overall, it of course matters, right?
Real quick, Perry Bacon of 538 said, I hate to be cynical, but it sure looks like Mitchell was brought in not to use her expertise in sexual crimes, but to be a friendly female face and casting Ford as a liar. Mitchell's resume and title make it a bit harder to say she was just hired because she was a woman, but the last several rounds of questioning have been basically like a regular attorney trying to raise doubts about a witness and not doing it.
But if that is her purpose, it has certainly not succeeded. So finally, I come back around to the lying. So even if you're in that minority of folks in the country who think, okay, yeah, maybe it happened, but God damn it, the guy was 17, he's 53 now, that's not the same guy. And yeah, it's bad, but I don't know how bad it is. And as we talked about earlier, some now, people, man on the street, so it's not a senator or Trump or anything like that, but man on the street, Republican voters being interviewed, including, by the way, by us. We went to a Trump rally. Emma got a lot of Republican voters on the record saying, it's just groping, it's no big deal, right? Well, then, and let me ask you this. Is his lying a big deal? Because he's clearly lied on 2 other occasions. And if you think, well, he did it, but he was 17 and I'm not going to hold him for it, well, are you going to hold him accountable for what he's doing now at the age of 53, which appears to be clearly lying about what happened at 17? That's why I think the fateful decision that Kavanaugh made was back when the allegations first came out. Are you going to try to cover it up and say it didn't happen? Or are you going to say, I can't believe what I did when I was...
I drank a lot. I was 17. It was really, I'm embarrassed. He said, there's some things I said that I cringe at. You should have included that.
Yeah, but he didn't. And so when he said it's not true, it never happened, I wasn't at that party. At this point, that doesn't seem very credible. And so on the lying alone at this point on such an important issue, done.
So there are real quick, there are so few elected Republican officials in the country who have significantly distanced themselves from Trump and have a degree of the sort of old school Republican that we talk about often on the show. Many of them are governors. 3 today. Charlie Baker of Massachusetts, 3 popular ones. Charlie Baker of Massachusetts, Larry Hogan of Maryland, John Kasich of Ohio called on the Senate to delay the Kavanaugh nomination and investigate the 3 allegations. Those are 3 Republicans.
Oh, so here we are about a quarter of the way, a third of the way through the proceedings as we cover it live.
And more than 3/4 of the way through Ford's testimony.
Yeah, because we got Kavanaugh coming up next. And my best estimation right now is that they will withdraw him and fairly quickly. That's my best guess right now because this is not going well for them. She seems very credible. It is a very serious charge, and he denied it 100%, meaning that if you believe her, then he's lying, and that is a lie too far. And let me be clear about what I mean by a lie too far. I'm not in the gullible media that says, oh, I believe him when he says he's neutral and he'll go on the Supreme Court and just call balls and strikes and won't take his conservative ideology into account because he'll look case by case. Nonsense. They all lie about that. So I'm not naive. I get those standard lies. The political lies that we outlined earlier, the Pickering and Miranda lies, are a different category and are perjury and I think are serious. This third lie is, if you believe it's a lie, and I certainly do now, untenable, unacceptable, and ends his nomination, in my opinion.
One little piece of breaking news now, because apparently it's a reading here from ABC and Chadwick Madeline at 538, that only one major news event at a time, President Trump has postponed today's meeting with Rod Rosenstein.
See, that's another indication. It's a small indication, but if they thought it was going well or they thought they could recover, they would want to do a distraction. Or it's going poorly, but we think we could turn the corner. I think they'd go Rod Rosenstein, we fired him, distraction, etc. I might be overreading it into that, but it seems like that it's another sign of like,
we
this isn't going to work.
To me, it's like everything that we can't save this right now, and this will only make it seem like I'm clearly doing something else crazy. Like it just augments the crazy. I don't know. Or a normal person got to him and said, John Kelly convinced him, not today, just stop.
Yeah. So Ben, before our turn is over here, and we'll continue covering it live with all different Young Turks hosts. Am I seeing it wrong here? I know we're both on the same side, but I mean, just as a reality
Well, I think
check.
she's an unbelievably credible, believable person. So the question is, what does that do? And if I would only say that what you're not taking into account is that if Kavanaugh, who was stiff, even Brett Baer said today he was stiff and robotic in his previous testimony, right? So Brett Baer from Fox News. So even if Kavanaugh is very good in the afternoon, then that returns to even it out, and it is the thing that ends the day on it. So Republicans can then go from saying, well, she was credible, to saying, you know, he's clearly a good man. He answered all these charges. We did it as best we could. We heard from both. Let's vote tomorrow. And, of course, that's once they've secured from Flake, Corker, Murkowski, and Collins that they're on board. It's very unlikely that once the committee votes and then leading to the Senate vote, I don't see the Senate voting with any suspense, right? I mean, if there's a vote, I think he's going to get confirmed.
Unless there's a McCain-like, but
be so great.
Very, very rare.
We don't want drama. We want his name withdrawn or he saying however they work it out, but there's no vote.
So what Ben is saying is that if they're going to lose, they won't vote, obviously. So they don't want to be embarrassed publicly. So if Murkowski, Collins, or anybody else, they just need 2 Republican senators to vote against them, goes to McConnell and says, I heard enough. We're done. Then they'll withdraw them.
Just remember, we're all like jurors right now, theoretically, and when you hear the prosecution's case, you know, many jurors have said, unbelievably, I've never sat on a jury, but you hear jurors say, the prosecution goes and like, man, he did it, right? And then the defense goes, and then they're like, wow, they have railroaded this guy, you know? So Brett Kavanaugh, stiff and robotic in his previous testimony, so I'm dubious that he'll be able to pull this off, but it wouldn't. I don't discount it completely. So you can't say that this is over until we've heard from Brett Kavanaugh. He will have the last word and a chance to. And again, he doesn't need to dispute what she said. He just needs to be able to make 51 Republicans think, yeah, credible. That guy's also credible.
Yeah. So 2 things about that. One, we should all reserve judgment until we hear from him as well. I mean, right now it looks really close to done, in my opinion, as I've told you throughout today. And I didn't say that before today. I'm saying it today, now that I've seen her. But of course we're going to watch Kavanaugh and see what he has to say. And of course you should be fair to him and hear him out. No question about that. That's the substance. On the politics, yes, if he comes forward and the Republicans specifically demanded that he go second, so that's what you remember at the end, if he comes forward and puts his own credible defense on there, they'll be able to say politically, just like Ben said, we heard them both. They both sound good, but it's a toss-up. We're going with Kavanaugh.
He's had a distinguished career.
Right.
He's an exemplary man, a great family man, great family.
So our job is to do a couple of things, but most importantly is to analyze the reality of what's happening, okay? And my analysis, I'm trying super hard not to be colored by my perspective on this, is that right now, if I had to guess as to which direction they're going to go, I would definitely guess significantly so that they will withdraw.
Well, I'm not going to guess, but she was great, and she still has a little time left. But it's a reminder, and you see it on Twitter to every guy. It's a reminder of what almost every woman already knew, and many guys needed reminders of, which is there's a very specific reason why women don't come forward, and you just experienced it right there.
Yeah. I mean, her story about how the uproarious laughter as they covered her mouth and she couldn't breathe. Oh, God, it's chilling. And she's, partly weeping during it. The need for the second door and front door in her house.
It took her naming the person took until a dispute and an argument with her husband about interior decorating. And that came 30 years after the event happened.
Yeah. And so, and when I say I think they'll withdraw him, that means not only do I believe her, and not only do I think the majority of Americans will believe her, but I think that she was so convincing the Republicans will think this is politically untenable for us. So that's where I'm at right now as we stand. And as always, I want to thank our members for making this coverage possible. And you can get any of this coverage live or on tape if you're a member, including all of our shows, of course. tyt.com/join to become a member and make this possible. Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.